So if I'm living alone and I have nobody, and this is between me and Allah, whether I pray or not, this I've done injustice to myself. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive it. But if I have children and I have people who's observing me, then I'm also harming them because they do not see me pray and they do grow up saying, why should I pray too? So we have to look at this. However, we were taught Islam in a different way. You go and pray and fast and do all these things and then do injustice to everybody else. You don't care about anybody else. Where this is the one we are accountable for, and each and every one of us will be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where somebody says, this person did this to me, and I want justice, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to realize this. So where does this come with the laws? Should we have laws like the West, or should we have Islam? And it's the biggest thing. A lot of educated people say, we should have laws like the West, we should be a secular society, and then those who pray, those who fast, those, it's up to them. But the West just becomes like the West. The only challenge here is Islam is not about laws. Even though we are taught since we are young, do this or you'll be burned in hellfire, do this or you'll be burned in hellfire, or whatever. We were taught halal and haram, rather than realizing the benefits of Islam. And Islam is a way of life, not just do's and don'ts or halal and haram. Islam is a way of life. When you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will help you. Al-Hadith says, Allah fi awn al-abd ma dama al-abd fi awn akhih. Allah will help you so long as you're helping somebody else. Subhanallah, if you look at this statement, Allah will help you if you're helping somebody else. Our problems sometimes seem so big. And yet if I spend half an hour helping somebody else, Allah will help me solve my big problem. So here is a deal. You cannot get it by just obeying the laws of the land. You cannot get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helping you in your issues when it's, because you've helped somebody else. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Rasul says, billah. If you seek help from Allah, you're seeking help from Allah. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah is capable of everything. And the problem here, when you tell somebody this, he says, yes, Allah is capable, but I need to follow al-asbab. I need to do whatever is in ad-dunya. And we do put aside that Allah can help us, and Allah will help us inshallah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised He will. And yet, we prefer to look at al-asbab. And we prefer to hold on. And I'm not saying we don't follow al-asbab. We follow al-asbab, which is the reasons of thing, but again, as we said before, do we have the right reasoning? As we said a few weeks ago, that if you want more risk, you go and visit your relatives. And yet most of us, when you ask why aren't you visiting your relatives, he says, I'm so busy with my work. I'm so busy providing for my families that I cannot afford to visit. So here we are doing what's opposite to what Islam is teaching us, which is if you want more risk, visit the relatives. Again, Islam teaches us, if you want more risk, have children, more children. And yet we grow up in this society that says you should have 1 or 2 kids to be able to educate them and provide for them. When Islam says if you had more kids, I will give you more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more. So again, the logic is 2 different logics. Either we believe in what the society tells us and the society draws certain aspects, or we believe in what Islam tells us and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. The biggest issue we see here, for example, under the laws of the West, a man is only allowed to marry 1 wife. But it's okay to have 3 or 4 mistresses. This is fine, so long as we have that paper that says only 1 wife. So if you look at the laws of the man laws, and you look at the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is different laws. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put it to protect the society. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَا يَعْلَمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Doesn't He know what He created? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows He created us and knows what we need and what we don't need. And the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is put to tell us. So here, when we follow the laws of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us. When they follow the laws of man, yes, we respect, but we don't get this extra help. And this is the main issue we have to face. And us as Muslims, we need this extra help. Because in our mind, we always think we're smarter than somebody else. Each and every one of us, why I don't know. Each one of us thinks he's smarter than the other guy. Some people say it's in our genes somehow. that we think we're smarter than the other guy. And all our culture is based on each and every one of us thinks he's smarter than the other guy and better than the other guy. And he has to be better. So here the only thing that could, in a way, calm us down is Islam to tell us we are all equal. We are all brothers. So here, when I treat somebody else, I'm treating him, observing that Allah is telling me we are equal. And subhanallah, one thing, as I was in Saudi Arabia last week, one thing, when the adhan comes, everybody leaves work and go to pray al-jama'ah together. Everybody, subhanallah. Whatever, even though there might be some bad habits in the society, but they hear the iqamah and everybody leaves what he does and goes to work. And when everybody leaves and goes to pray, subhanallah, each time I had ended up praying beside the worker or the small worker or the porter. Subhanallah. And you look who's praying beside you and you remember we're all equal. We've left, the boss left and everybody left his office and we all stood in front of Allah equal. It reminds us we really are all equal. And when you look to your right and you see who's on your right and who's on your left, you remember Islam has taught us we are all equal. We left our offices, we left everything else, and we all stood in front of Allah 5 times. We're all equal in front of Allah. We don't know whose prayer is accepted. We all left seeking the acceptance of Allah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us. And this is the thing you cannot put in anybody's mind. You can, even though we teach here that we're all equal, but you cannot brainwash people to think of this equality. Only when it happens, you will realize. And I dare to question anywhere in this Western world where you see the CEO and the lowest one standing side by side 5 times a day, they're both really equal in front of Allah. And this is what Islam teaches us. And you cannot get this anywhere else. And it would teach us there are more important laws than the laws of man, which are the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that could help us, harmonize us, and advance us, inshaAllah. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, all the children of Adam commits mistakes, and the best of those who commit mistakes is those who ask for forgiveness. So let's pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask for His forgiveness. Alhamdulillah, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So inshallah, as we learn, and as I mentioned, this is a discussion we have a lot, is why don't we follow the Western law? And the same discussion I had with the brother, he said, what's wrong with democracy? And there's nothing really wrong with true democracy, because in Islam it encourages that we have discussions. The issue with democracy is you're always given a choice, choose between 1 or 2 people that were pre-decided for you. Somebody decided who is there. We don't find the true choice that you can really choose. There's 2 or 3 people pre-decided in a way behind the scenes who's going to represent, and you choose among them. And if we look, we see in California, for example, the governor of California, under the democracy, 12 women stepped in saying he raped us. And yet with democracy, he won the election and he became the governor of California. And I don't know if he raped them or not, but the real issue is 12 women stepped in and saying this man raped us, and yet with democracy, he was chosen as the governor of California. The challenge here is Islam will not allow such a thing, that somebody who has bad reputation or to be ahead and elected. So Islam has a way of filtering these things which we cannot have in democracy. What we're looking as Muslims is we're looking why are we behind and analyzing other communities and other societies, and rather than look at the whole thing as a package, we're taking only certain aspects. And one of the aspects is why are people comfortable? Because people follow the law. Us as Muslims say, force me to follow the law. And if you talk to Westerners here, nobody says force me to follow the law. If you don't force me, I'm not going to follow. So why don't we start by each one of us following the law, and then the rest that don't follow could be punished. I always take an example when I'm in the Middle East and there is no line for anything. There is always a person says, let me start a line. and he starts asking people, giving us all the same lecture.